I used to console myself with the idea that the girls like brooding, mysterious, bad boys. But it turns out they really go for the guys who can cook. And one such guy, a happy bachelor, the Surreal Gourmet, the man who does stunts with food, Bob Blumer. Are you there? There he is.
That was the introduction?
That's it.
Well, I'd like to thank Moses for inviting me here. I'm honored and humbled to be amongst such amazing speakers. I'm very honored to be in front of all of you, people who it appears have real careers, which is amazing to me. Because I think of my career as an accidental career. And it started about 25 years ago when my kid sister Sarah moved into her very first apartment. And as a housewarming gift, I cobbled together a little booklet for her that I called Bob's Bachelor Basics. And in it, I included the 6 recipes that I knew how to make at the time, some tips for some inexpensive pick-me-ups, and the best of my bachelor wisdom at the time. It was, those were the days of my fledgling music industry career. I was working at the time as a glorified t-shirt hawker for rock and roll bands, traveling around North America for bands like AC/DC and Def Leppard. I told my mother, who cried every time I called her, that I was the merchandising manager on tour. But in truth, the bands would refer to me, actually, to put a finer point on it, I wasn't allowed to talk to the bands, but the band's roadies would refer to me as their t-shirt puke. At the same time, I was managing the burgeoning career of a singer-songwriter by the name of Jane Siberry. Some of you may be familiar with her. And so it's not hard to do the math here. With Jane, I was making about 20% of nothing. And my salary as a t-shirt puke also didn't really add up to much. So in order to elevate my quality of life, I was forced to get resourceful. And the very first thing that I did was I taught myself how to cook. I wasn't a great cook, but I got pretty decent, and I was pretty passionate about it. Now, I managed Jane for, I think, 8 years, living here in Toronto, and then I picked up and made the big move to Los Angeles, which, as you all know, is the city of reinvention. And during one particularly quiet time, during a real lull in my managerial career, when Jane was off in England making a record with Brian Eno, which sort of was supposed to take a month and ended up taking about a year, I decided that if all these Porsche leasing, fancy pants movie execs could reinvent themselves in Los Angeles, why couldn't I? So I started a project that basically picked up where my gift to my little sister ended up. And I sat down and I sketched out some ideas I had for a cookbook that was all about having champagne taste, but living on a SpaghettiOs budget. And instead of doing the obvious thing and photographing the food, I decided I was going to illustrate the book, or the book that I had dreamed up in my mind anyway. And so I did so with my own drawings that were inspired by my 2 favorite surrealists, Salvador Dali and René Magritte. And it was because of those illustrations, and having nothing at all to do with the food, which was basically just my bachelor repertoire, that I christened myself the Surreal Gourmet. Now, to this day, I still really don't know if it was due to my managerial tenacity or my sheer naivete, or perhaps it was the good karma that I'd earned beating myself up trying to manage an eclectic Canadian singer-songwriter. But somehow, I managed to talk my way into the offices of Chronicle Books in San Francisco and walk out with a modest publishing deal. So a year later, the book comes out, and much to my surprise, I'm immediately reviewed by the New York Times, and I'm invited to appear on the Today Show. And this was pretty heady stuff. I mean, I was not ready for it. And I should have known that it was beginner's luck, because the next thing that came down the pike was a scathing review from an Australian critic who chastised me for not presenting surreal food, not living up to my nom de plume. Now, this hurt, of course. And I immediately, was rationalizing, well, this is just not fair. I mean, does the galloping gourmet gallop? Was Jamie Oliver cooking in the buff when he called himself the naked chef? But after my bruised ego recovered, I realized that, sure, the criticism hurt, but this critic was actually handing me the keys to a kingdom that no one else, no chef, had yet to explore. This was 20 years ago, so it's before El Bulli, it's before molecular cuisine. Back then, when you talked about foam, it was something that you shaved with. But I got really excited about this idea, the whole concept of playing with your food. And so I remember going into my kitchen, and the very first thing that I made was I took a very thin slice of cheesecake. I sort of cut it out in a shape like this, put it down on a plate, and then I took an apricot half, and I turned it upside down on the cheesecake. From your eye to the plate, it actually looked like a sunny-side-up egg. But of course, it was your dessert. And my friends loved this, which just encouraged me to keep playing with my food. The next thing I did is I ran off to an art supply store. I bought a couple of wooden painter's palettes, and I cooked up some vegetables, brightly colored vegetables, which I pureed, and then I slapped down as dollops around the palette. And this was an entree. I think I added a piece of salmon, and that was an entree. Slowly but surely, this style of cooking evolved into what became my signature style, and I began to live up to my self-titled moniker of being this surreal gourmet. Now, I continued managing Jane for about another, I think it was probably about another 8 years as I was cooking at the same time. And then eventually, I flew in the face of all conventional wisdom, and I quit my day job. And since taking that leap, I met and befriended all sorts of chefs all around the world, and slowly but surely, through practice and osmosis, my cooking skills actually caught up with my enthusiasm. And by the time my third book came out, this is about 12 years ago, things were moving along swimmingly, but I still didn't have my own television show. And, by that time, just 12 years ago, we were getting to the point where you needed your own show to have a platform to enable you to promote a cookbook. So I had to dig deep. And what I did is I ran around, I took meetings with all these corporate food companies, or the big guys in the food world, and I promised them I was going to go off on this crazy cockamamie tour, and I was going to wear their logos emblazoned on a chef's jacket as though I was a NASCAR racing car driver. And somehow it worked. I managed to trick 6 corporate sponsors into giving me $250,000. The moment that money hit my bank account, I did what any level-headed, fiscally minded, house-poor cookbook author would do. And I ran out, I bought an Airstream trailer, I built a gleaming stainless steel kitchen inside of it, and because the old Airstreams always reminded me of vintage toasters, I did the obvious thing, and I built 2 giant 8-foot aluminum slices of toast on top of this thing. I called it my Toastermobile, and the moment it was finished, I hired a crew of 4 people, and I set off on an overly ambitious 30,000-kilometer, 3-month-long, 30-city tour around North America. Now, granted, I was in a Toastermobile, I wasn't rowing, but it was brutal nonetheless. And every time I got to another city, I would wake up at like 6 in the morning, and we'd do morning television shows. I'd do all sorts of media. And then in the afternoon, I'd do a drive-by shrimp feeding at a bookstore or whatever. And we'd cap it off every night with a kamikaze dinner party. When the tour was over, I pitched the notion of these kamikaze dinner parties to the Food Network. And that became the genesis for my very first show, which was called Surreal Gourmet. That lasted for 75 episodes and 5 seasons. And after that was done, I retired the Toastermobile, I cut my hair, which I've since regrown, but cut my hair, I burned my pajama tops that had become my signature attire, and I then took my love of adventure and my uber competitiveness, and I rolled it all together in this whole new concept called glutton for punishment. Now that show lasted for 5 seasons, during which I traveled around the world doing all sorts of crazy culinary competitions. There were more cookbooks. I tore my lateral meniscus chasing a 10-pound wheel of double Gloucester cheese down a cliff. I had 2 resulting surgeries from that, and I capped it all off with 7 food-related Guinness World Records. Thank you. We wrapped that show last fall, and now I'm working on our new show called The World's Weirdest Restaurants, which is a much safer show to be the host of. But this all begs the question, how the fuck did this happen? Let's recap. I had no experience, I had no cash, no cachet, no technological advantages, and no rational justification for crashing the food establishment. But somehow, I was able to create a niche for myself by polishing some basic culinary skills and by harnessing my passion and my quirkiness. And with these skills, I've managed to forge a small, humble, but still fun cottage industry that is based entirely on the lessons I learned from my days as a t-shirt puke. And now, I have the pleasure of helping other people elevate their quality of life through food. And best of all, I get to empower people to become heroes in their own kitchen. So somehow, maybe after all this, it wasn't such an accident to begin with. What I'd like to do now, as you can see, I have a few things up here. I would like to just demonstrate a couple of the things I've learned, a couple of the tricks up here. So right in front of me, I have the ingredients. If you just zoom in here. These ingredients are all just really basic, come from your typical Loblaws or whatnot. You know, maybe you'd be better off over here so that these guys can see, maybe not. Okay. So what do we have? We have some salmon, red bell pepper, lemon, green onions, parsley, egg, sour cream, all this. This is just really basic stuff, right? If you think about it for a second, this is the kind of stuff that a typical chef, these are the ingredients a typical chef would probably use to create fish cakes. And this is probably how that chef or someone at home would present the fish cakes. So we're going to just do a little experiment here. I'm going to reconfigure these exact same ingredients, but we're going to present them in a completely different way. So, start with the salmon, which I'm going to rough chop, throw in here. Little bell pepper. Some green onions. Some parsley. How do you guys like it? You like your food spicy? Little jalapeno. Bit of garlic. A little bit of lemon zest. You know what I love about lemon zest? You know what lemon zest costs you? Nothing. Because once you finish with it, you still get to juice the lemon. Now, to hold this, well, actually, for a little bit of unctuousness, I'm going to put some sour cream just to make it rich. And to hold it all together, an egg and some panko or breadcrumbs. Season it up, some salt and pepper. Get it a couple seconds in the old food processor. And we're going to bake this off in a muffin tin. Not quite sure what's so funny about baking fish cakes in a muffin tin, but regardless. Okay, so I'm putting this into the specially built ideacity oven, where it's going to cook for about 8 minutes at 350 degrees. Isn't it amazing what happens when you can harness such amazing minds? Look at the energy we find from that. All right, so we'll take one of these. All right, now you're really going to have to move out of the way a little bit. Here I have a bowl of mashed potatoes and a roasted beet. Now watch what happens when I take the roasted beet and I grate it, just about a tablespoon of it, into the mashed potatoes. Whoops. All right, so in about 10 seconds, we now have some glorious beet-dyed mashed potatoes. A standard issue piping bag costs about $3 or $4 at any baking store or a cooking store. Mashed potatoes go into the piping bag. This is when you're allowed to step up here, and they're... Now that is what I call a fish cake. Now, let's move over here. In front of me I have some really, really basic ingredients. Some peanut butter, a banana, and some Rolos. It doesn't really get any more basic than that. And over here I have a little packet of wonton wrappers. Now wonton wrappers are a wee bit exotic, or they were a few years ago, but now you can find them in pretty well any grocery store. A package like this will cost you about $1, and you get about 50 wontons. So that's about 2 cents a piece. So here's what happens when we take one of these wonton wrappers, a little smear of peanut butter, one little bit of banana, and Rolo. All right, so it's not your average wonton. I'll give you that. Now, water is the glue of wonton wrappers. So in order to seal this all up, just run my finger around the package like that, around the skin, the wonton skin, and fold it over. It's very important that you pinch the seams because you want to make this watertight or oil tight, because in a second, what I'm going to do is the unimaginable. I'm going to take this banana, this Rolo, and this peanut butter, and I'm going to deep fry it. And what's going to happen is that the chocolate and the caramel and the banana and the peanut butter are all going to get melted and gooey. It's all going to be wrapped up in this beautifully crispy, deep-fried wonton wrapper. Now, it's going to take about another 30 seconds, and while it's frying, I just want you to contemplate the fact that this recipe is all about a few really simple ingredients, a bit of creativity, a bit of attitude, and a bit of enthusiasm. There are no, billion BTU unit stoves up here. I mean, this is a $15 butane, camping stove. Yet, when you guys walk out of here and you get to taste one of these, because yes, there's one for each of you, you'll see how delicious they are. Now, I have one last thing to share with you in my no time that's left, but I've learned how to avoid Moses. So, hang on. So here we go. Here's how these get presented. A little bit of icing sugar. Dress that up. All right. Now I have a question for you. I know when you come home from work, you're tired, you're grumpy, you're hungry, but how many of you would cook more often for yourselves from scratch if you knew that you could knock out a great dinner in less than 15 minutes? For yourself or your kids or whoever. Right. Well, I want to prove to you how you can do that. So I need a volunteer from the audience whose culinary skills are at least at, say, a par with Paris Hilton's. Do I have any volunteers? All right, would you come up? Okay, we're going to run through this. Moses, this is hopefully no more than 3 minutes, because that's all the time we need. What's your name?
My name is Alexandra.
Alexandra, would you step over here, please?
I need to tell you, I don't know how to cook at all.
Perfect! Because you know how competitive I am. I like to have a head start. Got that on? Hi. Yeah. Okay. A rubber band that you can roll your hair with. No, I could tie it up with a string of. No. Don't worry about it. All right. So Alexandra, here's the dealio. Let me just get this out of your way. Ever seen one of these before? Can of SpaghettiOs? Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Alexandra, do you know how to operate a can opener?
Let me try it.
Okay, don't start yet. Okay, so here's the deal, Alexandra. In the amount of time that it is going to take you to heat up that can of SpaghettiOs, I'm going to attempt to make a complete pasta dinner from scratch. Okay, do you think that's possible?
No.
All right, we're going to see. So I need the audience to help count me down. Let me just tell you what I have here. I have some pasta, garlic, chili pepper flakes, basil, tomato, and that's about it, I think. So, on the table. No head starts. Hands in the air. Audience, count us down. 3, 2, 1, go! And you're off.
God,
Oh, she's nervous.
help me.
Okay, so I've cut up my garlic. I'm cutting up a shallot here.
I'm done.
Nice. Well, now you have to put it on. Here, I'm going to turn this on for you.
Oh, I see.
You've got to heat this up.
Oh.
And not only do you have to heat it up, but it has to be boiling throughout, not just bubbling on the outside. Wooden spoon. You got a wooden spoon. Alexandra, I encourage you
Anyone
to get that.
tell me how to get this thing out?
I guess she wasn't exaggerating, was she? All right, so right now, what's happening is the garlic, the shallots, and the chili pepper flakes are all working together. They're flavoring the olive oil so that every single bit of pasta that gets tossed in this is going to be full of flavor. Okay? Can you smell that? How's it smell? How's your SpaghettiOs smell? Mmm.
You sure my stove is functioning?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see a flame right there. Okay, so watch this. We're going to make an instant tomato sauce. Take my tomato, slice it. I want you to see. Look at that. Done. Tomato sauce. Done. Add a little basil. Now, I want to test my pasta. Normally, what I do is I throw it against the wall, but I'm thinking there's not really a wall in this theater that I want to throw it against. So let's just test it. That is ready. Perfect. How you doing now?
Not ready yet.
All right, so pasta into the pan. I'm going to add a little bit of the pasta water. There we go. And in the plate. Take that secret ingredient out. And we are done. Alexandra, I'm sorry, but you're just not ready yet.
Anyone want to try my cooking?
All right. Well, there you go, folks. That's what you need to know about cooking good food fast. Let this up there, dear. I tell you what, I'll give that to you. We're good.
Well, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was wonderful, Bob.
Thank you very much.
There's the book. And here's my favorite dish. Can you get a shot of this? Just the dish.
Yeah.
Right? What does it look like? Huh? Okay, now check out the title.
Great assistant. Great assistant.
Having said all that, I'm off with Alexandra for
For dinner.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.